Okay, stop. Before you click away, I need you to understand something. This is not a gross video. This is actually one of the most fascinating, universally human rabbit holes in all of history. And the fact that nobody talks about it in school is exactly why we need to right now. Because here's the thing, every human being who has ever lived, every king, emperor, peasant, and philosopher had to poop. We're talking about a biological reality spanning hundreds of thousands of years. Yet when historians write about ancient civilizations, they spend 600 pages detailing how Roman legions forged swords and 0 sentences on what a centurion did when he had to use the bathroom in the woods. That is a massive historical blind spot. Today, we are fixing it. Picture this. You are sitting in your modern bathroom. You finish your business, reach to your left, and your hand brushes against a terrifying texture. Cardboard. The roll is empty. In that moment, your heart drops. You experience absolute panic because you are completely dependent on an ultra-soft, industrially manufactured luxury that is historically brand new. Modern toilet paper on a roll wasn't a thing until the late 19th century. So what did we do for the 300,000 years before that? We're going back. Prehistoric caves, ancient Greece, Roman latrines, the imperial courts of China, and medieval Europe. We are going to find out exactly what humans used and the absolutely unhinged hygienic practices that will make you want to hug your charmin. The question nobody asked for thousands of years. Let's go. Chapter 2, the prehistoric trial and error. First, let's get something straight. Wiping is not a modern discovery. You'd be surprised how many people think ancient humans just walked around completely unbothered by hygiene. False. Early humans were intelligent, and leaving feces on your body in a harsh environment is a fantastic way to invite infection and predators who can smell you from a mile away. Before we get into organized civilizations, we need to talk about the Paleolithic era. The hunter-gatherers. What did they use? The answer is, whatever was within arm's reach that didn't look like it was going to kill them. Imagine the terrifying reality of prehistoric trial and error. Imagine being the first human to learn that you absolutely do not wipe with poison ivy. The level of environmental awareness our ancestors developed just to use the bathroom safely is staggering. Anthropologists believe prehistoric humans relied heavily on geography. If you lived in a dense forest, you used large, soft leaves, specifically plants like mullein, known by survivalists today as cowboy toilet paper for its soft, fuzzy texture. If you lived on the coast, you used smooth seashells scraped along the body. If you lived in the freezing tundra, you used snow. While freezing cold, snow is one of the most hygienic methods available in the wild. Nature's bidet, and near a river, you used water and smooth, water-polished stones. It sounds rough to us, but it was functional and abundant. Chapter 3, the ancient Mediterranean, where things get rough. Let's move forward to ancient Greece, birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and some of the most spectacularly painful-sounding hygienic practices ever committed to the historical record. When you picture ancient Greece, you picture marble columns and togas. You don't picture pissoi. Pissoi were small, oval-shaped ceramic shards or pebbles, and the Greeks used them to scrape themselves clean. Let that sink in. They were scraping their rears with broken pottery. This was the mainstream hygienic consensus. There is an ancient Greek proverb translating to, 3 stones are enough to wipe. It gets crazier. Archaeologists excavating ancient Greek latrines have found these ceramic shards with names inscribed on them. The Greeks practiced ostracism, voting to exile hated politicians by writing their names on pottery. Historians believe Greeks would take the shard with their enemy's name on it and literally wipe their own feces on it as the ultimate sign of disrespect. It's a very Greek contradiction, brilliant democracy and biological warfare simultaneously. If you think the Greeks were intense, wait for Rome, the civilization that gave us the most horrifying communal bathroom experience in human history. The Romans were famous for public latrines. Picture a beautiful marble room over a trench of flowing water, except there are no stalls. You walk in, pull up your toga, and sit shoulder to shoulder with 50 other men, having a casual conversation with a stranger while actively defecating. But how did they wipe? Enter the tersorium, a sea sponge attached to a wooden stick. Natural sea sponges were absorbent and soft, but here is the catch. The tersorium was shared. You used the sponge on a stick, rinsed it in a shallow gutter of flowing water or a bucket of highly concentrated salt water or vinegar, and passed it to the guy next to you. You passed the poop sponge to the guy next to you. Romans believed soaking a sponge in vinegar killed disease, but it was absolutely not enough to stop parasites and dysentery, which ran rampant. Wealthy Romans had private toilets and personal sponges, but for the average citizen, the communal sponge stick was daily life. Chapter 4. The Eastern Innovations. Before we judge the past, we need to talk about something that shaped hygiene more than any invention: the divide between washing and wiping. While Europeans were scraping themselves with pottery and sharing vinegar sponges, massive portions of the world figured out a significantly cleaner method. Throughout the Middle East, South Asia, and parts of North Africa, water was the primary method of cleaning. In ancient Islamic and Hindu traditions, rigorous personal hygiene is a core component of religious purity. You cannot pray if you are physically unclean. So the cultural framework demanded a better solution than dry leaves. The practice was simple. Use a vessel of flowing water and your left hand to physically wash the area clean, followed by thoroughly washing your hands. This is where the cultural taboo of the left hand comes from. Across many cultures, the left hand was strictly reserved for bathroom hygiene, while the right hand was used for eating and greeting. These rules weren't just superstition, they were about disease prevention. By separating the hand that handles waste from the hand that handles food, Eastern cultures drastically reduced the spread of illness. But what about actual paper? Enter ancient China. China invented paper in the 2nd century BCE. By the 6th century CE, we have explicit written records of toilet paper. A Chinese scholar named Yan Zhitui warned his family, "Paper on which there are quotations or commentaries from the 5 classics or the names of sages, I dare not use for toilet purposes." By the 14th century, during the Ming Dynasty, toilet paper was mass-produced on an industrial scale Europe couldn't even dream of. In 1393, the imperial court in Nanjing ordered 720,000 sheets for general court use. The Hongwu emperor got a special batch of 15,000 sheets that were incredibly soft and heavily perfumed. The gap between what wealthy people could access and ordinary people could manage is ancient and consistent. Chapter 5. The Dark Ages and the Modern Role. Let's jump to medieval Europe. The Middle Ages get a bad reputation for being unhygienic, and in this specific case, it's entirely accurate. Most medieval peasants used agricultural waste: hay, straw, hemp, and grass. If you were slightly wealthier, you used old, washed rags of wool or linen. But if you were the King of England, you didn't just get better materials, you got a human being dedicated to the job. Enter the Groom of the Stool. This was an official title in the English royal court. The Groom of the Stool was a male servant, usually a nobleman, whose sole job was to supply the king with a commode, water, towels, and physically assist the king in wiping his royal rear. You might think this sounds like the worst job in the world. You would be wrong. The Groom of the Stool was often the most feared man in the country. Why? Because he locked himself in a private room with the king daily. He knew all the king's secrets. People would bribe him just to whisper a good word into the king's ear. Across the ocean, indigenous cultures relied on agricultural staples. In North America, the dried corn cob was common. A dried corn cob is quite soft, absorbent, and easy to rotate. American pioneers used them well into the 19th century. But as the modern era approached, the printing press changed everything. Suddenly, paper was everywhere. Newspapers and catalogs became cheap. And what do you do with a newspaper after reading it? You take it to the outhouse. In the 1800s, the Farmer's Almanac printed issues with a hole drilled into the corner so farmers could hang it inside their outhouse for easy tearing. The Sears catalog was another favorite until they switched to glossy paper, causing nationwide complaints because glossy paper doesn't wipe well. In 1857, Joseph Gaiety invented the first commercially packaged toilet paper. These individual sheets were infused with aloe, and Gaiety was so proud he watermarked his name onto every sheet. It wasn't until 1890 that the Scott brothers popularized the continuous roll. Early toilet paper was notoriously dangerous, riddled with wood splinters due to cheap manufacturing. It wasn't until the 1930s that companies advertised splinter-free paper. Let's conclude the video. We've gone from Ice Age snow to Roman sponges to Chinese perfumed paper to splinter-free rolls. Let's think about what this means. First, ancient humans were incredibly adaptable. Across every civilization, humans developed practical solutions to a universal physical reality. Second, the fact that we look back at the Roman sponge on a stick and laugh tells us how privileged we are today. The modern flush toilet and the 2-ply roll are miracles of modern engineering we take completely for granted. Finally, leaving this entire saga of human ingenuity out of history books is absurd. We reconstruct ancient battle formations in painstaking detail, but the daily experience of how every human being maintained their hygiene barely shows up. Every generation in every civilization on every continent dealt with this. They found solutions. They passed it down. That is fascinating, raw, unfiltered history. So the next time you sit down and reach for that soft roll, remind yourself, Julius Caesar dealt with this. Ming emperors dealt with this. Medieval peasants dealt with this. It is literally ancient history, and it's about time we started treating it that way.